In this presentation, we will take a look at itemized deductions related to medical expenses. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. As we go through all itemized deductions, remember that we only take the itemized deductions if they are greater than the standard deductions. If our itemized deductions add up to something less than the standard deduction, we will take the standard deduction. The amounts for the standard deductions depends on our status as single, married filing joint, separate, or head of household, qualified widow, widower. Here are those thresholds for the standard deduction. We need to be over them in order to itemize. Medical expenses have an added restriction, and that restriction is going to be that they must exceed 7.5% of the AGI or adjusted gross income. So when we consider the medical expenses, we have to first think, okay, are we going to itemize? Number one, if we are, then are the accumulation of our medical expenses greater than 7.5% of our income or our adjusted gross income? If it is, then it's worth pulling them together, and we'll get a deduction possibly for the amount greater than the AGI of 7.5. Medical expenses will typically be after insurance proceeds. So in other words, if we got reimbursed from insurance for medical expenses, we cannot take the amount that we got reimbursed for. It would have to be the expenses over and above the amount that was paid for or reimbursed by insurance generally. For the taxpayer, a spouse, or dependents, the medical expenses can be for either of these individuals in order to be deducted as itemized deductions on the Schedule A of the taxpayer's return. What types of deductions qualify as medical expenses? Typically, types of doctor's prescriptions would qualify, but the general health recommendations generally do not qualify. And there's a lot of gray area here. We know that, of course, if it was a prescription drugs that we had to buy, then typically that would be something that would clearly be prescribed by the doctor and deductible if it qualifies under the limitations. However, if we were talking about something like eating good greens or something like that, eat celery, we probably cannot deduct the salary that we buy at the grocery store. There's a lot of cases kind of in between that we can imagine that a doctor might prescribe specific things. If for example, we have a specific illness and they prescribe that we should have a spa or something like a jacuzzi in our home or something like that, then those are kind of, there's a lot of areas that could be some gray areas and may have some research on them. For example, the question there would be, is it strictly medical related or is there personal use of it as well possibly? And therefore, how can you treat something like that? So typically, generally, we're going to say, of course, things like prescription drugs are going to be deductible typically. If we're talking about things that are for general health, not usually deductible. If we're talking about special kind of things for special circumstances, then if it's prescribed by the doctor, we may need to look into some more research about that specific situation, possibly even go into court cases to see similar types of situations and the deductibility from them. Medical expenses generally must be paid during the taxable year in order to be deductible. In other words, will be more on a cash basis no matter when the medical actual time or the medical operations or the cost of the medicals were done. Whenever the procedures were done or the items were purchased or delivered is not the point in time. Typically, the point in time would be the time that the payment was made. That would be the year that we would have the deduction. Medical transportation costs could include things like the cab ride, a bus, and of course, train fares and personal auto to transportation for medical purposes can be deductible. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.